for really just sitting around and doing nothing. Or most of the time, my work, I'm trying to develop uh, a hobby or a skill, I guess, of computer programming. So I spend most of my time, working on my computer while at these places. So that's really what I wanted to do ultimately. I wanted to fix up a squat and work on my computer. But then I ran into all these all these alcoholics or just lazy people who I was so codependent on dependent on other people's opinions of myself. I just were drawn to what they wanted to do instead of what I wanted to do. So now I have to get away from it in order to continue with this this goal of developing the skills. Yeah, yeah, here too. It's just what happens when a bunch of kids live in a place for so long. It just builds up so much random history, just accidental history, I guess.
Did any of your places do anything like this?
Oh yeah, this is always how it works. I'd be worried that if it wasn't like this.
When Ken moved in, he was living here about a month before I moved in. It was when this other guy, Joseph, used to live here, and the house was completely trashed. It was filled with garbage and garbage. It was totally disgusting. Completely disgusting. Nobody had taken out the garbage in a couple years. The room that I'm living in now was completely filled with garbage. There was no windows. Everything was totally covered up with old blankets and plastic shoved in the windows and boards nailed over everything. And we make dump runs kind of regularly. We want to clean out the backyard. We're trying to make the house really, really nice. Just from the beginning, I was just if I can get at least 2 good years out of this house, I'll be totally happy. Spend the first 6 months totally busting ass and fixing it up so it's really nice, and then being able to be oh, it's my home. For the next 2 years. And if 2 years from now I get a letter on my door saying cease and desist, I guess I'll spend the time to fight it long enough to find a new place to live. By that time, hopefully, eventually, I've got a 5-year plan of wanting to own a house here. Just basically a house maybe about this size, maybe a little bit bigger. But I'm 30 now, and I love squatting, but at the same time, I'd rather own my own house and be working on it constantly, and actually have no problem putting money into it. I really don't have any problem putting money into this because all we've really had to do is fix minor stuff so far and paint. We've had to fix some. Well, with the power, it's been a pretty major thing. We had water out for a few days, but all that stuff is relatively easy to do when you know what you're doing. But yeah, I've only maybe sunk about $200 into this house over the past couple months, and then everything else has been totally scavenged. Especially having a college neighborhood close by, there's always tons of garbage for furnishing and everything because college kids, no offense, college kids, but you guys throw everything out. That's still good.
It's just kind of spooky. I don't know if there's anybody here. Are they gonna come jump out at us with a knife? That'd be something else.
We used to do a lot of stuff. We would play around in the elevator shafts because they had the elevator shafts and the elevators are frozen on one floor. And there's 6 floors you'd go into or something, so the elevator would be on the 4th floor. So we used to get in the elevator shafts and shimmy down the cord, onto the top of the elevator, and then open the trap door and jump into the elevator and climb out. Stuff like that was really fun. Me and my friend Brad, we would go look at potential squats and stuff a lot. We used to always say it was archaeology, because when we would go into a place that had been empty for a couple years or whatever, it was always fascinating just because people would always leave behind photos and stuffed animals and whatever artifacts of their lives. It was always pretty interesting. And then I can only imagine too, when people went in there to refurbish that place, they found all of our stuff that we left behind. Every time I walk by what used to be Happy House, I just stand there and I'm oh man, I just want to go in there and see what it's like now, because I feel I'm a part of it. I'm a part of its whole story or whatever, because I'm I imagine like, okay, what was it like before anybody ever squatted in it? What was it like right after it was abandoned? Then there was the first wave of people that lived there. Then it was empty for a couple years. Then we lived there, and now this like family lives there. You know what I mean? It's like, but none of the people really have any crossing, like, you know what I mean? It's just bizarre. It seems like you should at least be able to be like, hey, you know, I live here for a couple years. Let me tell you this, what it was like back then, you know. And the people that live there now would go, oh, that's fascinating, you know. Thanks for letting me know, you know. Really, they probably wouldn't care. They'd just be like, you know.
There was those that managed to take squatting and use that as a catalyst for learning to do something else, like construction. Like I know quite a few people who paint houses or do plumbing or electrical work. I was doing electrical work for a while myself. This is you know, you jump one of these to get power. Jump one of these, you pull one of these out and jump the leads. I put it like this. I remember there being an article in Philadelphia magazine, and then they had somehow found out about one house I'd stayed at was called 911, and they called staying there glorified camping because you were using sternos to heat your food, you were staying in sleeping bags because it was cold out, or candles or flashlights. These are all elements of camping, and so they called it glorified camping. And at the time, like, me and my friends were offended by it, but I would kind of agree with that now because it's this is it. Oftentimes when you can't do anything about the utility issue, that's what you're left with. And really, I mean, that's the only thing that keeps you there is the roof or the walls. You know, other than that, you might as well be outside.
Like when kids come to town that don't know anybody yet, they usually end up like staying in here.